Now, before you say I'm hate farming for another Borderlands 4 video, go check out my other content where I'm sitting here very excited for the game. But I think after the news of Unreal Engine 5 on Borderlands 4, it could be a very, very high possibility that this game is already going to be dead on arrival. And I'm only going to say it once. I'm not making this video to specifically cause more negativity, but I'm going to make this video to let people know where expectations should be. And this is coming from somebody that's played Borderlands and loves Borderlands for 12 plus years. But with my experience with every new game releasing on Unreal Engine 5, I think it could easily be the downfall of Borderlands 4. Now, I know everybody's going to say we should take that step forward. We should be happy that Unreal Engine 5 is going to be the next best thing. I think the only reason they moved over to Unreal Engine 5 is because of the massive worlds. And that's because in a recent interview that Randy Pitchford had, he mentioned that anything you could see, you can go to. And Unreal Engine 5 has a certain rendering within its code that allows a lot more render distance with AI that doesn't impact your frame rate as much. A perfect example of this technology is in Ark Survival Ascended, which is also on Unreal Engine 5, and if I have any Ark players in my community or any Ark players just watching this, you know damn well the issues that UE5 has presented, and the amount of times that these developers have blamed UE5 for their mishaps and their lack of optimization. For example, in Ark, we have very annoying lighting bugs, texture bugs, anything that has to do with lighting and shaders has just not been set in stone and or fixed for Unreal Engine 5, and I imagine this is going to be the case in Borderlands, but maybe less so because Borderlands relies so heavily on cell shading to get its graphics, or maybe we could do the same thing similar to what we did in Borderlands 3, where we just disable certain shadows like volumetric fog. But my biggest issue, and I think my biggest scare and worry when it comes to Borderlands 4, is when we are playing another Borderlands game, when we went from the very unoptimized state of Borderlands 3 to the point where I'm still having issues with that game after going into my files. I have a very nice rig, I got a 3080, I have a nice computer, and I can only imagine what it's like on console with the loading times and the rendering and the shaders and what sacrifices console needs to make in order for the games to even run properly. And I can sit here and I can talk about how anyone on Xbox or PlayStation when they play split screen has to suffer at sub 30 FPS in this day and age, which is absolutely ridiculous. And Wonderlands was a little bit better optimization wise, but a large part of that was because there was less screen clutter, there was less graphic intensive gameplay mechanics, and even then Wonderlands had its fair share of frame rate issues. The Plague Bearer that summons that little green storm from the sky, that still causes crashes and causes physics. It's a different version of physics on Wonderlands, not exactly the same thing from Borderlands 2, but it is a form of that crashes people's computers even to this day. So, Borderlands has this large track history of unoptimized titles. The memory leaks in Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2 having its slag crashes and physics like I previously mentioned. The pre-sequel seems to be the only one that doesn't have too many issues out of all the Borderlands games, even though we could talk about the certain things in the pre-sequel, like if you're looking at the moon, or if you're looking at certain things that have bloom to them, it could tank your FPS because lighting wasn't exactly great in that game, but very minuscule compared to the annoying things we had to deal with in every Borderlands game. So going to this very newborn style engine of Unreal Engine 5, there is going to be issues. I 100% guarantee that day one or even month one, shit, even year one of Borderlands 4 is going to have some sort of graphic issue that people are going to need to disable on PC because that's just how it's going to be. It does have its net positives, and it's probably needed to move the future of Borderlands into the more modern direction of gaming. I hope we understand that unless they are really smart and they've figured things out that other game devs haven't, the very likes of the optimization are going to be at risk on a game series and a game franchise that's already well known for having optimization issues on well-established engines, and now you're taking that same studio and transferring them to a new engine, not a lot of experience on it, and we're hoping for the best. We've seen it with Cyberpunk, seen it with plenty of games that were highly anticipated, and even if they worked well, this could be the best Borderlands game ever, but if I need a $5,000 computer or I need to do special things in my settings just to get it functioning, or Xbox players have to deal with drastic sub 30 frame rates, then this game obviously isn't going to be delivering that great looter shooter experience that we all want in 2025. I almost forgot to mention, did we forget GTA 6 is going to be coming out eventually? And why would you play unoptimized Borderlands if GTA 6 is ready to install in your library? Just some food for thought. But hey, I could be wrong, but history inevitably does repeat itself. With the rendering that is going to be taking place, that should give give them a little bit more leeway to fully optimize the game. Yes, Unreal Engine 5 has many tools and resources to make the game run better, to make the game smoother. AI generation, especially with the 40 series cards, if we're going to have the AI super sampling, supports onto those, just like we have seen in other UE5 games, but that will only be for 40 series holders and above. But that does add a substantial amount of FPS into these games. But every UE5 game that has introduced this feature has almost made it a necessity to run this setting in order to play the game at an optimal level. I don't know about everybody in the comments here, maybe I'm just a PC elitist, but I like my games to run above 60 FPS and consistently above 60 FPS. Especially in Borderlands 3, the first 2-3 months, I was playing on all low when my graphics card was recommended for all epic settings, and I still had laggy, choppy experiences. So when I say reduce your expectations when it comes to the optimization, I think UE5 is already going to cause problems. And everybody in the comments, and even on Twitter, I got into a little scuttles with, I don't really care, but we got into these little scuttles on Twitter where people are like, Borderlands 3 and Wonderlands, they learned how to optimize the game because they were on the same engine. Well, if Borderlands 4 is on UE5, they could basically scrap 80% of the work they did on UE4 going into UE5 because it does not apply. It does not always one-to-one apply over into the new engine, so they have to basically learn the whole thing brand new, and I can almost assure you they didn't have access to UE5 immediately on Borderlands 3's launch. If anything, they probably transferred to UE5 around 2022, and that's just what I think based on everybody else in the industry, meaning they've only had 3 years at the absolute most to work on this new engine and be familiar with it. For comparison, it took them about 3 years on the UE4 in order for them to optimize it for Wonderlands, so maybe it's possible, but like I said, don't hold your breath. But the one thing I can say, if we want to look on the brighter side of things, is UE5 will drastically improve some things, including rendering distance, foliage distance, everything that has to do with distance rendering and precision rendering. If you don't know what precision rendering is, it's a very detailed thing. So if you're in a certain area and there is a poster on the wall and you're 20 feet away, that poster isn't going to look like mush. It's going to look like the actual poster from a further distance, and this is just called precision rendering. Some people call it distance field rendering, which, not to be confused with distance rendering, they're all different things. I'm not a game dev, I just know about these type of things based on the things I have worked on, but things like that do make for a nice, cleaner experience, and we can actually see some examples of this in the Borderlands 4 screenshots with how the distance rendering is going to work, and it's going to make console players have a very smooth experience as well, and improve load times. Load times are notoriously fast on UE5, even though Randy has mentioned, or at least hinted at the fact that save quit farming won't be the future. I think it's safe to say that load times will be drastically reduced, but once again, all of this is going to be at some sacrifice for shading quality, and if they're crazy enough to implement ray tracing into the next game, then we're absolutely cooked, if I'm being honest. But that's the video, guys. If you did enjoy, make sure to like the button down below, as it does spread out my Borderlands content to more people in the Borderlands community, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on another video from me, guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you all later.